Okay, so we have a recording. All right. Just one sec. Okay. Oh, Lord, my computer. Okay. Hi, welcome everyone. It's Careyann Golliver, America's franchise matchmaker and founder of Franchise Logic. And today's special guest on It's Never Been a Better Time to Consider Business Ownership in 2021 is Sandee, Devine, and I'm super excited to have her join. We're talking about starting a business, buying a business, or buying a franchise, and how to choose the right one. And Sandee is here joining us today because she has been a franchise executive for over 30 years, specializing in franchise development, strategic planning, crisis management, and legal administration. So she is a wealth of information. Welcome, Sandee.
Hi, Careyann, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. So, you know, I think you are with Spadia. Help me pronounce the last name.
Spadia Liana Franchise Attorneys.
Okay, yeah. You're with Spadia Liana, and you law firm, right? And
Yes.
you guys really pride yourselves in taking a balanced approach and representing both franchise owners and franchisors who created the franchise, correct?
Correct.
Right. So two different, both sides of the plate, which is really important to take note because, you know, there's a lot of franchise attorneys out there. There's a lot of attorneys generally, but if you're looking at investing in a franchise, you need to make sure that you hire the right outside advisor that you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But knowing both sides, your law firm is really better able to help your clients navigate through difficult times. You have a very deep understanding of the relationship dynamics that underpin all franchise systems. And just like I tell all of my candidates, you know, when I start working with them and match them up with franchise concepts, Sandee, you know my role. You know, I tell my candidates, look, you're going to go on some blind dates. You're going to have some courtship with some franchise companies, and you may or may not get to the altar because what we've said all along is this is meant to be really a profitable business marriage. It has to be right for the franchisor. It has to be right for the franchise seeker, franchise buyer, right? So let's talk a little bit about, you know, why would someone even hire an attorney in the first place?
You know, it's no different than working with a franchise broker or a franchise consultant to help you find the right franchise and help you understand how to navigate the process. You're looking at opening a new business. You've received a document, the franchise disclosure document with the franchise agreement in it, typically 250 pages or more long. And you're signing a contract that whether your investment is $5,000 or $500,000, you will be bound to, for on average, a 10-year time frame. And there's a lot of details in that contract that you may not understand. So to hire an expert to help you understand that contract, what it means to you, what are the long-term pieces of information that are critical for you to know, is just, in my opinion, absolutely essential. So I can tell you that one of the biggest things that has boggled my mind in over 30 years in franchising is someone that would sign that contract without legal guidance, but more importantly, sometimes without even reading it, because they're just so excited about getting into business and they're so passionate about that concept you need to temper that with a little bit of, hey, let me make sure that I know what I'm getting myself into.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, they get excited about the shiny new thing, right?
Yes.
And that's great, but then they have to kind of park those emotions on the sideline and really get the right outside advisement to make sure they understand what they're committing themselves to. So I'm kind of curious if someone is just buying, let's say they're buying just an existing mom and pop business, and there's a contract involved in the purchase, the purchasing agreement. Can they bring that to Spadia, or how does that work?
They actually can. We specialize in franchising, and that is 98% of what we do. But we have about 17, 18 attorneys right now, and they all specialize in different areas. So we do have a mergers and acquisitions department. And I know that sounds like you mean big business, but it's really business transfers of any size. And they can help clients with that as well.
Okay, fair enough. So whether they're buying a franchise business, an existing franchise location, or a local mom and pop, they can still utilize your services.
Absolutely.
That's great
Absolutely.
to know. That's great to know for everyone that's listening. So, how about, if I'm super excited about my shiny new franchise that my franchise consultant found me, and I feel like I've done all my homework, and my neighbor down the street is an attorney. Why can't I just use him?
You've decided that you want to buy this shiny new franchise because of all of the support that the franchisor will provide you. And the franchisor will provide you protections. So franchise agreements are very specifically set up to give the franchisor quite a bit of control over their products and their systems and their image. If you're looking at, if there's an attorney that doesn't understand why the franchisor has so much control, they're going to scare you to death and tell you that this agreement should be 50-50 all the way across the board. I wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole. I've seen it happen many times. And the reality is, franchising is one of the biggest contributors to the US economy. And it is one of the biggest contributors to people being able to open their own small businesses and start to realize their own dreams and take a little bit of control over their destiny. We all understand right now how tough it was last year and how it was back in 2011, where I had no control over my income, over my assets, what I did with anything. So franchising in that regard is a wonderful thing. But the attorney needs to understand that the franchisor has control. And I always use one of the largest franchises out there. If I go to McDonald's and I order a Big Mac and there's no special sauce on it because the franchisee doesn't like special sauce, I, as the consumer, didn't get what I expected. And now I go and tell all of my friends, don't go to McDonald's because they've changed the Big Mac. It's horrible now. It's dry. And you, as the franchisee, want to know if the guy down the street is acting like a putz and doing that the franchisor can stop him before that reputation hurts your business. So that's where an attorney that understands why some of those controls are in place are important.
Right. And they are needed. I mean, not everyone is the right fit for a franchise, certainly. I mean, someone who doesn't want to follow somebody else's rules or boundaries or parameters, like you just talked about, they're not going to be a good fit for a franchise, right?
No, if you are the person that is an extremely creative an inventive entrepreneur, franchising won't be a good fit for you. Or at least not as a franchisee. You may become a franchisor over time.
Right. You may have your own vision and start your own franchise, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Kind of like I did with my family business, right? So
Yes.
yeah, but and to your point, you know, those boundaries and parameters and limitations, um, they're in place for a reason. It's so that anyone who goes to, whether it's a McDonald's in Wisconsin or Florida or Colorado or Indiana, and they order the Big Mac, they know what it's going to taste like. They know what's on it, right? And that's what franchising, that's the power of franchising, right? That's actually a positive, not a negative.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
we all know that, well, you and I at least know, and hopefully the majority of people tuning in know that there's a lot more to franchising than French fries and Big Macs too, right? So,
You know, it's funny. First off, I just want to follow up on that to say an experienced franchise attorney, a law firm or attorneys that specialize in franchising, and that's pretty much all they do. They understand what those parameters are, and they understand what's reasonable and what's unreasonable within the industry. So that's really what you want to know when you're buying a franchise is, are the rules and regulations and all of the other clauses in those documents, are they reasonable within the industry? So, you know, there are times when maybe a franchisor might get a little overzealous in what they're asking for. It might not matter to you as the franchise prospect, but you should at least know that that's there, and that's really the goal.
right.
So it's important to have that review, make sure you understand, and just take the extra time, spend the extra money. It's not all that expensive to get that done, but you know, you're also setting up and getting advice from your accountant and maybe setting up your business and getting advice on how to get financing. All of those things, you should be looking to employ experts in the franchising arena because they understand how it works. It's all involved to help make sure that you're doing everything right to help you be successful.
Absolutely. Yeah. And many of those industries are on as panel guests on our event. So that's, you know, to your point that you really need to seek the right outside advisors for the right tasks, right? It wouldn't be fair to ask a friend who just happens to be an attorney to review a franchise agreement if that's not what they specialize in, because you're putting them in a position of trying to be an expert in something they're not. And quite frankly, that's just not fair to them. It's not fair for you to ask them to do that. You know, so I think, you know, it's clear what I hear you saying is, you know, take note of, you know, take some time to figure out who are the experts that you're going to probably interview, maybe a couple of you, and then decide who you trust to take on this endeavor. The cost at the end of the day, in my opinion, is minimal. It's a drop in the bucket compared to what you're going to be spending if you make a mistake. Right. And at the end of the day, really, I mean, so the franchise disclosure document, the legal document that is disclosed to any potential qualified buyer by the franchisor per the regulations of the Federal Trade Commission, like you mentioned, it's a rather lengthy document. I've seen them anywhere from 150 to 300 pages in length, and it can be a little bit intimidating to someone that has never seen a franchise disclosure document, right? So the key is that you take it in chunks and parts, and then before you're ready to try to get approved, you should go seek advisement from an outsider who specializes in reviewing those documents. So my question to you, Sandee, is, does your law firm, does FADIA review the entire document or only the franchise agreement, which is an exhibit in the document?
We actually review it in its entirety. And when you see a franchise disclosure document, it's really broken out into two pieces. One is the disclosure document, which is really a snapshot in time of the franchisor. It gives you a lot of information about policies, procedures, their history, franchise owners, growth, changes, background on the executives of the company, including their legal background, if there's ever been any litigation, or if they've ever been in any kind of trouble, or if they filed bankruptcy. So there's a lot of information in that section that never makes it to the franchise agreement. But there's a lot of things in there that do get into the franchise agreement. So you need to look at both, make sure that it's consistent, not only within each document, but between the two documents. And then the franchise agreement itself. So we'll do a review to check that. And then, in the background, we're doing things like checking their trademark filings, making sure the franchisor is doing what they're supposed to do to protect that brand and those marks. Kind of important to you. It's a big piece of what you're investing in. And then the last piece is to actually review the agreement itself and look for those red flags. So as we've already said, franchise agreements are one-sided by their nature. But sometimes franchisors get a little zealous in what they're asking for. You need to be aware of that. You need to decide if that is an issue for you or not. And then we actually get on what I call it a conference call with our clients. And we review not only those comments of what we've looked for in those documents that we just discussed, but we'll review the entire agreement with a prospect, making sure they understand everything that's in it, who can, can't, has to do what, and those ever important what ifs, because there's a lot of we may, or if we ever develop, those types of things in the agreements. The end result of that call will be we may have comments that we send out to the franchisor, either asking for clarification or maybe requesting some changes, specifically in regard to what that we talked about on that phone call.
Okay. Yeah. So the document itself is, I tell all my candidates, you need to read from the front to the back cover. Don't use it as a door stopper. Make sure you understand what it says, what you're committing to. It clearly defines the franchisor's role in the relationship and their obligations, as well as your obligations in that role. Because again, it's that profitable business marriage that we're talking about. So, and you got to pick your battles. I don't know. Most of the time, franchisors aren't willing to change material things, fees, percentages of royalties, etc., because they can't love you more than they love any other franchisee in the system. And if they change something for you material-wise, they're going to have to go back and change it for the entire system, and that's an administrative nightmare, and they're just not going to do it, right? But what are some things that could potentially be up for negotiations, or are there any things?
And the first thing is, yes, there are some franchisors that absolutely will not change anything.
What's the benefit to that, Sandee?
It comes back to it's a level playing field. And for their administration side, it's much easier. The franchise agreement is a form document. That's why it's included in the FDD. So, and it makes it much easier for them to manage that brand and help it grow. And let's face it, the growth, more franchisees in your area, that helps you become a stronger brand, and it increases the success of all of their franchisees. So what you have to think about is if you became a franchisee and you were paying a 7% royalty and a 5% marketing fee, and you got the exact same support and service as someone that was paying 2% of each of those, how cohesive a system do you think that will be? You're not going to be happy. And then you're going to start going rogue, doing things on your own. This is not, let's see who can get the best price for a car. So we always recommend, don't ask to change anything that would put you on an unlevel playing field with other franchisees. You're joining a system for a reason. That's why you chose franchising. Don't ask for changes where it would limit the franchisor's ability to manage and protect the brand. And again, as an outsider looking in, that's scary, but as an insider looking out, you're really happy to have that security wall up to help protect your investment. Where you can look for things, where you may be able to limit your liability or exposure if possible. So again, not something you want to think about when you're starting a business, but what happens if it doesn't work out? What's that termination clause? Is there any room for movement there? If you've tried your very best and followed all of the systems and did everything you were supposed to do, and for some reason it still didn't work, just how much damage does that do to you? So maybe we can try to do something there. What happens if you're trying to sell? What are those rules and regulations? And do those same rules apply if you're transferring it, say, to your kids? Maybe you're buying this franchise so that when you retire, you can give it to your family. So do those same costs and rules apply? And then think about, let's look at the positive side. Maybe you're a great franchisee for the whole first term. There's a renewal fee in most franchise agreements at the end of that first term. Is there any room for movement if you're a really good franchisee of reducing or waiving that fee? It's still not something you're thinking about when you're first starting up the business, but if they are agreeable to making changes, you could save somewhere between $2,000 and $20,000 10 years from now. That's not a small amount of money. And that more than covers all of your other costs for professionals as you're moving forward with the agreement. And then there's unique circumstances. So the franchise agreement may say you are required to devote your full-time efforts to running this operation. But you currently own 2 other businesses. Oh, and here's where some franchisors that won't make any changes will at least acknowledge in writing. You want them to acknowledge in writing that you do have those 2 other businesses, and that that's not a default of your agreement. Make sure that you get that in writing.
Yeah.
Because there could come a time when the people at the franchisor change, and now all of a sudden they say, well, we didn't know that. So those are the things where we would look to protect you.
Yeah. You never want to do business with a handshake, right? So yeah.
No matter how lovely the people seem and how down to earth and transparent they are with you, let's face it, staff changes at companies, management changes at companies. So yes, you definitely want to make sure you get something in any type of agreement in writing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the points that you were making were, using a franchise attorney to review this document and go through it with you is money well spent, because it also forces you to think about how are you going to exit this business, right, before you get into it, specifically with the things that you talked about as far as, selling so many people that I work with, their vision and one of the driving forces they want to be a business owner is because they want to create a legacy. They want to build a family legacy. So if they can reduce fees when they're selling it to family members as opposed to somebody outside, that's something, that people wouldn't even think about asking for, right?
Absolutely. It comes down to, would you ask your dentist to perform heart surgery? It's that important.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. Yeah. And I think we talked about really the important, I mean, the franchise disclosure document, all the exhibits, all the items, all the sections, every, from front to back cover is important. But, I think we kind of touched on all of those. So, Sandee, as everyone has probably noticed just listening to you, you just have a wealth of knowledge that spurs other questions and ideas that people may have when they're looking at possibly, a franchise investment is huge, just like a house, just like a car. So what kind of free offer are you giving people that are attending this event?
Anyone that has attended this event has a free 30-minute consultation
Wow.
with one of our franchise attorneys, so that if they're looking at a franchise and they want to understand the process and what we're looking for, and they have questions, they have a free 30-minute consultation. They just reach out to me first and I will make the connection for them so that they can take advantage.
Awesome. That's very gracious. Thank you very much. So with that, we're going to end our session with Sandee. Sandee, again, thank you so much for joining us today on our event.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and looking forward to speaking with and helping anyone we can.
Thank you.